Well, the two men also clashed on the war in Ukraine.
Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him, I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled.
Well, I've been speaking to our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, who's in Moscow, our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, in Kyiv, and our Middle East correspondent, Yolan Nell, who's in Bethlehem. And I began by asking Steve what the reaction had been in Moscow.
Well, no official reaction yet. We don't know yet whether Vladimir Putin stayed up late to watch the US presidential debate. If he did, then I reckon he would have enjoyed the spectacle, particularly Joe Biden's shaky performance. I mean, keep in mind that previously President Biden had publicly described Vladimir Putin as a killer. He'd vowed to stand by Ukraine. Certainly, I think the Kremlin will have noted and appreciated Donald Trump's criticism of the scale of US military assistance to Kiev. And what's more, at times it sounded as if Donald Trump was actually blaming Joe Biden more than Vladimir Putin for Russia's war in Ukraine. He said that Joe Biden had encouraged Russia to go into Ukraine. He said that Ukraine had lost so many people and those gorgeous cities with golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him, Joe Biden. That will have gone down well, I think, in the Kremlin.
OK, Steve, thank you very much. Well, let's go to Kyiv now, speak to Gordon Carrera. Gordon, what has the thoughts to the debate been there?
Well, there's no country outside of the United States where the result of the election, the debate matters more than here in Ukraine. That's because of the importance of US military and financial support for Ukraine in sustaining its effort to fight off that Russian invasion of the country. Now, there hasn't been an official reaction, and I think politicians here will likely be cautious about being seen to wade into American politics and antagonize someone who might be president in the future. But I think they will have looked on carefully at that debate. Some themes that we've heard before, the criticism by Donald Trump about the amount of money that's gone to Ukraine, him using that figure of $200 billion. Donald Trump's talk as well that he could somehow bring about a deal before he even enters office, after he's elected. But the contours of what that might look like were very unclear. I mean, there's been talk that perhaps he could use that financial aid as leverage to try and bring both sides to the negotiating table. But that's very different from actually coming to a deal which the Ukrainians in particular would be content with. And Donald Trump was pressed on whether Ukraine would effectively have to give in to Russian demands about ceding some of its territory. And Donald Trump pushed that away, but didn't really give the kind of detail you might want. So I think there will be some concern here about the outcome of that presidential election, about what a Donald Trump presidency might mean if he won, but also a knowledge that under President Biden, it has been sometimes slow to get the military and financial aid that Ukraine says it desperately needs to keep up its war effort.
Thank you. Let's go to Yolan Nell, who's in Bethlehem for us. So, war in the Middle East, of course, a prominent topic. What's been reaction to those comments?
I mean, the White House race has real consequences. So, of course, this was being extremely closely watched here. In terms of the tone and the substance from both of the candidates, things were very similar to what they've said recently and on the campaign trail. We did have, though, Donald Trump accusing President Biden of siding with the Palestinians, of sort of being soft on Hamas. He said that he should let Israel, in his words, finish the job. And then in one of the more bizarre moments of the debate, he accused President Biden of acting, he said, like a Palestinian, like a weak one. Now, President Biden retorted that he had he'd secured this three-phase plan to end the war, and that was backed by the G7, the UN Security Council, and importantly by Israel. He said that it was Hamas that wants the war to continue. He reiterated that point. Then Donald Trump came back and he was saying that, in his view, it was Israel that was the party that wanted to continue the war. And he said, that it was really President Trump that was holding them back and was not giving them the tools to do so.
OK, Yolande Knell in Bethlehem, thank you. And also thank you to Steve Rosenberg in Moscow and our security correspondent Gordon Carrera in Kyiv.